Good afternoon. My name is Amadea Azerki, and I am a technical sales engineer with the California Regional Office in Northern California. Joining me today is Tope Bello, who is a product engineer with the Implementation Services team here in Redlands. We want to welcome everyone to today's live training seminar. In today's seminar, we will discuss the use of ArcGIS Workflow Manager, starting with a brief introduction to the benefits of workflows, how to author them, and then how we can use them to manage day-to-day operations. Each topic is followed by a software demonstration, review, and Q&A session. Please send in your questions at any time throughout the presentation. Now let's get started with an introduction to workflows. What exactly is a workflow? Essentially, it's a sequence of connected steps or repeatable chain of operations. Workflows easily guide users to ensure that no step is skipped or left undone. The work can be performed by a single person. As in this example, a single user can import imagery, then digitize a site plan from that imagery, and finally print out a finished map. Or we can involve multiple departments. For example, if we wanted to incorporate field crew data to help digitize our site plan. Workflows can also include several processes or stem across organizations or outside agencies. For example, once we've created our final map, we might want to email all of the project managers involved with the project, both inside and outside of our department. Now, why is it important to manage these workflows? Working in an integrated environment poses challenges to communicate effectively and manage complex work assignments. It's difficult to manage staff with varying skills and as well as distributed data resources. So we need to be able to streamline both GIS and non-GIS related tasks. We need to know who has performed the work at any given time, as well as know which tasks still need completion. In addition, with any project, it's important to maintain a balance between the cost, the time, and the quality. For example, producing a high-quality product in a short amount of time inevitably increases our costs. Alternatively, if you spend too much effort minimizing costs and man-hours involved, you run the risk of outputting a poor quality product. Managing workflows helps you minimize the risk between these factors by providing a framework in which you can reduce the extremes between the time, quality, and cost ends of your project management triangle. Lastly, it's important to be able to monitor progress throughout a project, preferably behind the scenes to minimize disruption to users. It is also beneficial to notify users when tasks are assigned to them or changes have been made to data they've been using or referencing. Now, what exactly is ArcGIS Workflow Manager? It's an enterprise solution that addresses these challenges by providing a way to standardize and model business processes and operating procedures. Managing workflows in an enterprise solution creates efficiencies. You're able to streamline projects across your entire organization, integrating both GIS and non-GIS workflows. With ArcGIS Workflow Manager, you can manage your projects using standardized workflows, which provide a consistent and traceable process for users to follow. Essentially, this minimizes time spent on each individual task. You can also streamline the project's lifecycle by tracking the status and progress of tasks, allocating resources, reviewing documented history and reports that are all provided within ArcGIS Workflow Manager. This information is centralized so that you can quickly analyze all aspects of a project, as well as maintain documented workflows, which minimizes the learning curve for personnel and improves overall work quality. This in turn saves both time and money. Now let's take a look at a few workflow examples. Within data management, whether you're capturing or maintaining data from imagery or doing a yearly review of your data quality, working with a multi-user editing environment and maintaining a high level of quality control can be a bit daunting. It's important that the work being done is using the correct version and doesn't linger in the database any longer than it needs to. It's also key to be able to synchronize these updates across companies without reinventing the methods used. In the case of land record updates, we could simply split a parcel to update and assess our database. But what if we need to cross-check the information with the survey crew to ensure its accuracy? Here, we can add a step that checks with the survey crew to verify if any changes need to be made, and if so, loops us back to the split parcel step inside of our workflow. Now lastly, let's look at utility construction projects. In this example, there could be several design phases throughout a single engineering project that might not be specific to GIS and require approval from multiple agencies. Establishing a workflow helps ensure that no phase or approval is overlooked or missed. Here, both land rights and financial approvals must be met before each phase of the project can move forward. Now, what software is required? ArcGIS Workflow Manager is a standalone application, but does require an ArcEditor or ArcInfo license. It works with ArcSDE to maintain data in an RDBMS, or Relational Database Management System, for example, Oracle, SQL Server, Informix, or DB2. There is a web component available, but for the purposes of today's seminar, we will focus on the desktop application of Workflow Manager. Now let's move on to our first software demonstration. Inside of ArcGIS Workflow Manager, we have two applications that we're going to take a look at today. There's ArcGIS Workflow Manager Administrator and ArcGIS Workflow Manager. Let's first take a look at the Administrator application. Here we can access the configuration elements of ArcGIS Workflow Manager and define the look and feel of our workflows. We can right-click a connection and note that we can connect and disconnect from databases. We can also add a connection. When we expand our geodatabase, we have grouped elements into categories based on their functions: job components, notifications, and security. Inside of here, I can select job type, and right-clicking on the job types folder, I can add a job type. Or I can modify an existing job type in my repository by right-clicking. In the security folder, here we contain information on the groups and users that can access the application. You can control what users can access by setting their privileges. Now let's take a look at ArcGIS Workflow Manager. The first thing I want to do is view the jobs that are available within my system. The results of my query can be viewed in the list here, and I can also view the same query in a map showing the location of each job. I can use the Select tool to select a specific job and review the properties that it contains. Here you notice job status, percentage complete, whether an area has been defined, and what the current step of the workflow is. We also notice job ownership and assignment. Since there might be a lot of jobs existing within the system, I can use one of the predefined queries to locate jobs that have been assigned to me. In addition, I can search for specific jobs by using the Find Job tool. Here, I'm going to select for a job with an ID of 11 and click the search, and it takes me directly to the job. Here I can select the workflow, and then I have complete control over the user interface and can set up the look and feel of the application to suit your needs. This gives us a much better view of each step within the workflow. Now, there are many items that come pre-configured within ArcGIS Workflow Manager, but there is detailed help documentation available to assist you. In this demonstration, we have explored the applications available to you for defining and executing your workflow management system. Now, in this section, we discuss the workflow concepts, why it's important to manage workflows with ArcGIS Workflow Manager, and the software required. Now I will turn it over to Tope to answer some of your questions. Tope?
Thank you, Amadea. We have a couple of good questions coming in this afternoon. John from Belle Plaine is asking, does JTX or ArcGIS Workflow Manager work with SQL Express in a workgroup geodatabase? The answer is yes. JTX or ArcGIS Workflow Manager 10 will work and continue to work with a SQL Express workgroup database. That's the minimum. It does not work on a file GDB or a personal geodatabase. We do require you to have an SD level database. So yes, SQL Express would work just fine. Christopher from Manuker is asking, what is the notification standard for email? Is it only SMTP or is it allowing for Exchange which does not have the connector installed? Currently, within the ArcGIS Workflow Manager application, we use the SMTP protocol for sending emails. We do connect to any type of mail exchange server, so long as that mail exchange server supports SMTP notification types, or SMTP message types. Tim from Australia is asking if my non-GIS users can actually interact with my ArcGIS Workflow Manager system. The answer is yes, you can use the ArcGIS server extension for ArcGIS Workflow Manager, and you can use that to actually push or serve out a web client that your end users can interact with by creating jobs or executing jobs on the web application. Tim from Omar is asking, is Workflow Manager a standalone product or part of ArcGIS? The answer is yes. ArcGIS Workflow Manager is a standalone application, and it basically can be executed outside of ArcGIS. When you install the product, we do install a couple of components on the machine. Two of them you've seen today, the admin and the actual Workflow Manager application itself. We do provide you with some extra tools that allows you to interact with the system. Jesse from Midland is asking, how do I populate the RDBMS? We do have a post-install utility, and what that does is it basically creates the system tables that ArcGIS Workflow Manager needs to interact with your system, and it creates the tables and defines the schema the way we want it to be. And at that point on, you just need to establish a connection and connect to it through the administrator, and you can start building your system. Chris from Manuker is asking, is there a Silverlight API for ArcGIS Workflow Manager server? The answer is no, not at this moment. We do have a REST API that we will be shipping with the product at 10. However, you could write Silverlight client applications that actually consumes the REST endpoint. You serve your jobs out there to your end users. Jan from Rapid City is asking if we must have a version geodatabase to use Workflow Manager. The answer is No, we do require you to have a standard RDBMS. The database itself that the workflow manager system tables are residing in does not have to be versioned. Also, the system tables that ArcGIS Workflow Manager is interacting with should not be versioned. However, the data that you're actually accessing within the application could be versioned if you choose to. Peter from Reno is asking, can I use data from a non-enterprise level database? The answer is yes. You can interact with data from a file GDB. You just wouldn't be taking advantage of the data management components of the workflow manager. Carlos from Merced is asking, when will there be a training course or courses for workflow manager? We do offer a workshop, which is basically an on-site workshop at customer or client sites to train people on using ArcGIS Workflow Manager. Carlos Isaac is also asking again, are sample jobs tasks included when you install? Yes, we ship the product with a set of pre-configured Workflow Manager configuration files. We do have 2 out of the box currently, and we plan on adding more to that. The Quick Start config contains existing job types and workflow types and users and privileges that you can easily use, and that basically jumpstarts your workflow management deployment process. I think that's all for now. I'll pass it over back to Amadea.
Thank you, Tope. Now let's move on to the next session where we talk about authoring workflows. Let's first discuss how we go about defining our workflow. We need to consider what type of work needs to be done. For example, here we want to create a corridor map. Within the application, we'll refer to this as our job type. Job types are essentially templates for creating jobs. Many of these types already come configured within ArcGIS Workflow Manager to assist you in creating workflows. Now, why would we create multiple jobs? Maybe we need the same corridor map, but we're using different data sources, or if we're using different geographic areas, if we're using various personnel that might not match the original job, or even under different time frames. Next, let's think about how we accomplish the work. When creating a corridor map, we first collect data within the field and then import that data. Maybe we would run a buffer model to create the actual corridor and then perform a quick quality control before finally creating a map. Each of these individual tasks will be referred to as step types within the application. Similar to job types, step types are essentially templates for creating steps, and several step types already come pre-configured with ArcGIS Workflow Manager to assist you in creating your workflows. Now that we've outlined the step types needed within our workflow, let's think about their sequence. For example, quality control has to come after we've imported the data. And after we've performed the quality control, we might need to do a few more edits and loop back to running the buffer. Finally, we only want to really create the map once we've received approval for the data that's being used. Now, step types are the building blocks for your workflows. They provide basic information as to what happens when the step is executed and how it is represented. When a step type is added to a workflow, it becomes a step, but it still references all of the properties of the original step type. Step types have 3 main properties. The first is profile, which contains the basic information about the step type. In this example, we have step type as edit data and a little bit of information about what happens when we edit that data. Additionally, we can add an optional description specific to the steps type that expands on how we want to configure additional information about the step and what the user will do in order to complete the step. And finally, execution, which defines this step behavior, whether it's procedural and executable, or even if it prompts the user for a question. So when we're considering step behavior, let's try to identify which steps can be automated. For example, you could launch an application automatically, like ArcMap, with the appropriate layers already loaded into the map for edits. Or we could open an Excel file that contains data that's needed to update a report. You can also automatically run an ArcGIS process. In this example, we're importing flight path data, and then we need to proceed to the next step in the workflow called Create Buffer. In this step, the geoprocessing tool, the buffer geoprocessing tool, is launched automatically, pre-configured with the necessary information. We can also execute a custom program, as in here, where we are automatically loading data into an SDE database. ArcGIS Workflow Manager provides several of these custom steps already configured, and the source code for each of these are provided as part of the developer kit. Now, there might be a step that can't be fully automated, but we can prompt the user with a question. In this example, we've configured the step to ask the user if more edits are required. If they answer no, then the workflow will proceed to the next step. If they answer yes, then the workflow will loop back to an edit data step. Now that we've created the step types and identified those that can be automated, we create the workflow simply by dragging and dropping the steps onto our workflow canvas. We then link the steps together in the proper order and consider any circumstances where it might be appropriate to introduce looping, branching, or even dependencies on other steps to finish before proceeding. Finally, when the workflow looks complete, we validate and save the workflow. Now let's move on to our second software demonstration. Here we will return to the administrator application to configure and design our workflow from scratch. In this demo, we will create a new workflow. So I go to the Workflows folder. And the goal of this is to create a workflow that will guide me in preparing a corridor map for an upcoming pipeline review meeting. So when I'm adding in this new workflow, I will first provide a name, corridor map, give it a category. The category is simply used to organize my workflows, and a description. This just allows me to give a little bit more information about what the corridor map is used for. So I'm creating this one for a pipeline. Now we go ahead and go to the Workflow tab. Now inside of the Workflow canvas, we have several steps that are pre-configured, as well as some custom steps available. We're going to first start with the procedural folder, and we're going to identify each of the steps that we need to create the corridor map. First, I'm going to bring in the collect field data step. This will ensure that we collect field data before proceeding with our workflow. Next, I want to create a buffer using that field data. The buffer tool is not already pre-configured, so I'm going to create a custom step that will generate a buffer to define our corridor area. Here I give it a name. And then we're going to go to the execution and show that this is a custom step configuration. So we're going to select Custom Step Object. Next, we're going to add in some execution arguments. So I'm going to browse to some registered steps within the Workflow Manager. Click on the desktop steps. And here I want to select Launch GP Tool. This allows me to launch the geoprocessing tool automatically. Click OK. Now I'm going to let the application know where that tool exists. So I'm going to browse and select a toolbox where the buffer tool exists that I want it to launch. Here I've selected the toolbox, and inside is my buffer tool. I can pre-configure the parameters, and we'll leave them as the defaults that I've already set within the toolbox. I'll also check to attach a log to the job, and click OK to save my changes. Next, I want to drag the Generate Buffer tool onto my workflow canvas. Now, the next step within our workflow, we've got the data collected from the field, and we generated the buffer. Now we need to perform a quality control. So I can select QC data and bring this step in. This step will open up a pre-configured ArcMap session for easily quality controlling the data. The properties, let's double click on the QC data and update the step properties. So the properties set here allow me to define how my end users will see this step when they execute it within the workflow. I want to make sure that this step is not skipped because it's very important to perform the quality control. So I'm going to uncheck step can be skipped. This will enforce that the step is executed and not missed. Now let's take a look at the detailed properties. The status we set here will show up in the application once users execute the step. I can also change the % complete and control the percentage of work. Let's change it to 60. Control the percentage of work that's done when the step is completed. Please note that this is a number that can be configured to suit your needs. We're going to save the changes. And now I want to bring in our last step. The last step of our workflow, once we've QC'd the data, we want to perform some kind of output. So we're going to create a map. So we're going to drag the Create Map step onto our workflow canvas. This step will actually create a map in PDF format and attach it to the job. Now that we have all of our steps defined, we're going to use the link tool to connect the steps. These paths will define the sequence in which the workflow is executed. Now, one thing I want to double check is the properties that control the behavior of the steps during execution. So I'm going to select each of the steps and make sure that they proceed to the next step after execution. I also want to check the details and ensure that the status is appropriate. So in this example, I can say it's ready to work because it's the start of my workflow. We'll change the percentage complete to a small number and then click OK to save the changes. I'll do the same for generating the buffer and ensure that it proceeds to the next step after execution. Set this as an editing step and give it a value. Let's just change the details here, and we're going to make the status as completed. Say it's 100% complete, and click OK. Now that I've pre-configured each of the steps and I'm satisfied with the workflow, I want to fine-tune how it appears. So here I can use alignment and distribution tools to improve the look of my workflow. When I'm happy with the workflow, I can then validate and save the workflow. When my workflow is saved, I need to go and link it to a job type. So I have a draft job type for corridor map. Here I'm going to edit the job type. And I want to make sure, let's just bring it down so you can see it. I want to make sure that the workflow is attached at the bottom. So I'm going to select the workflow that I just created, corridor map. In addition, I can provide a category or description. But one of the most important parts of this is that I want to update the state or status of the job type. Right now it's in draft mode, so I want to update this so that it's inactive. Only job types that are active can be used inside of the application. Finally, let's look at the default properties tab. Here I can see what the assignment is. I'm going to leave it as unassigned, but I want to uncheck the due date because default properties can be set up as a template for job types so that all job types can be created from this type will contain the same parameters. So in this example, I want to predefine so that all corridor maps are due 5 days from the request date. Also, I'm going to select a data workspace. And then a priority of medium. In this demonstration, I'm going to save these changes. And in this demonstration, we've created our job type and defined the steps associated with the workflow. We've defined the sequence and default properties within our workflow as well. We are now ready to use these within ArcGIS Workflow Manager application, and we will see this in our next demonstration. Now let's take a moment to review what we've learned. Locate the review question link in the upper left corner of your browser window. You can click on this link now. For the review question, I'll ask, what are the required properties of a step? Is it A, description and execution, B, profile and description, C, profile and execution, or D, both A and B? To submit your answer, click A, B, C, or D, and then click the Send button. In this section, we discussed how we define work and break it up into individual steps that can be run manually or by automation. Then we use those steps to create the entire workflow. Now I'm going to turn it over again to Tope to answer a few more of your questions. Tope?
Thank you, Amadea. We have a couple of questions come in during the last presentation. Christopher from Manuker is asking, is it possible to create a generic step that is used in multiple job types that updates its help and documentation based on context? You can definitely have a step within your workflow manager system that can be reused across all your multiple job types. However, for you to change the help or documentation associated with it, meaning the step description, you would need to do a little bit of manipulation of the system by using tokens or perhaps having a custom step that would read some sort of configuration element on your machine to populate the right help based on what you want your end users to see. Chris from Houston is also asking, what is the level of integration with ArcObject for customizing tools or workflows in the entire application? Overall, everything you see today is based off of ArcObjects. The entire application is utilizing ArcObjects in the backend, and also the application is a .NET application. We do allow people customize the look and feel of the client application, so you can create custom steps to use within your workflow. You can create custom commands and tools to use within the client applications. And this is pretty straightforward in configuring. We do have an extensive SDK help within the workflow manager installed. Chris is also asking, Chris from Houston is also asking, can I interact with relational tables not registered with SDE? The answer is yes. However, we have what we call the extended properties concept, or the linked properties concept within ArcGIS Workflow Manager. This allows you to actually use more business specific tables in capturing information associated with your jobs. The caveat to this is that these tables must reside in the same database as the workflow manager repository. If this tables already exists somewhere else, you can basically create a view and make that view accessible or available within the workflow manager repository, and have a field that actually links that table to the JTX jobs table, and that can allow you easily interact with an external system or a different table. Paula from Strapin is asking, is there a place in the ESRI support pages where JTX users can share, swap workflows? We do have a forum currently available. So if you go to the forum's support homepage and browse to the forum section, we do have a JTX forum section that you can easily, post questions in this case and upload existing workflows. However, we've introduced at 10, we've introduced a capability whereby you can export individual configuration elements like workflow steps or job types. What you can then do with this is upload the JXL that actually exports out, and put it on one of our resource centers that will be making available later on at 10. We have a question here from Shana, Newport News. How different is this version than the JTX version that works with 9.3? We've introduced a lot of new features. I would go over a couple of them here real quick. At 10, we've integrated closely with ArcMap. So we have a lot of productivity tools within ArcMap that allows you to easily activate, switch between jobs without having to go in and out of ArcMap. On this ArcGIS workflow server stand, we used to have a web application back in the day. Now we actually, which was utilizing the SOAP endpoint. Now we have a REST API that is going to be available at 10. And we do have a rich internet application, which is a Flex app, web app that we ship with the product. We're also considering making this available in other rich internet flavors. Another thing that we introduced at 10 is the concept of repository replication. So what this means is you can have multiple people working off of the identical repositories, but they're actually interacting with completely different servers. So that way everyone is working off of the same job. This could be useful for you if you have contractors working outside of your network within your organization, and you want them to interact and see the same exact jobs that you defined for them. Carlos is asking, if we have JTX now, how soon will we be able to obtain a white paper for Workflow 10? As soon as the product is available. We'll try to make that available for you once we get the ArcGIS Workflow Manager 10 out. One last question here from Christopher in Manuker is, are there improvements to Task Assistant Manager at 10? For example, will you be able to control user-defined toolbars? There's been a little bit of enhancement to the Task Assistant Manager. The functionality will pretty much remain close to what you see now. It's got a better user experience, and we continue to welcome enhancement requests from our users, overall. I'll pass it over back to Amadea right now.
Thank you, Tope. So let's take a look and review the question results. It looks like 33% of you got the answer right. Profile and execution, which was selection C. Description is an optional property of the step. Now let's move on to the next section where we can start talking about utilizing the workflows that we've created. So workflows are executed through individual jobs. Job types provide a way to categorize your work and processes. Although all jobs differ in some ways, there's usually several commonalities that can be extracted and standardized. Job types allow you to group similar types of work together. You can create a single or multiple jobs from the same job type. Now, each of these will inherit the same workflow, but they might differ based on different personnel assigned, maybe varying timeframes for the work to be completed, or even geographic areas involved. Now let's think about who will actually perform the job. Is it a single user or a group of users? Is there only a single step or small portion of the workflow that needs to be performed by that person or group? Or are they responsible for the entire workflow? Now, a job can be assigned to an individual or a group, and many different users may interact with a job throughout its life cycle. Users can be assigned varying levels of privileges that control how they interact with the system. Their credentials are used to allow access to specific applications as well as track history of the work being done. And we use groups to help identify key roles. For example, we can assign the job to the GIS technicians, or a job to field crew, or those responsible for quality control, or for all of the project managers at once, rather than limiting it to a specific individual on one of those teams. Now, aside from assigning the work to be done, let's consider where that work falls geographically. This is defined within ArcGIS Workflow Manager as the area of interest. It's essentially the geographic extent of the job and can be drawn interactively within the map view. Not only does the area of interest help us coordinate efforts between overlapping and adjacent jobs, but we can use it to help predefine where edits should be made within an application like ArcMap. Now we've reached the time where we can execute the job. If the job is assigned to us, we simply select the job we want to work on. Then we activate the Workflow tab to view the workflow, and then progress step by step through each stage within the workflow. Here you can see the Create Version is my activated step. Now, as the job progresses, we want to track the work that's being done. ArcGIS Workflow Manager can send us notifications via email at different stages within the process. For example, if a job is assigned to me, I can receive an automatic email to notify me that I have work waiting. Or if I've been working on a job, I can be notified if a specific data set is altered or there have been changes to a specific feature. In this example, someone has deleted the Bermuda Dunes Airport, which is critical to the project that I'm working on. So I've received notification that the feature has been removed. Now, Workflow Manager automatically maintains a history while users progress through the job and individual steps that are contained within its workflow. In addition, users can manually add notes to further explain why a step might have been reassigned, or if there's potential information that needs to be added to a step within the job. ArcGIS Workflow Manager also provides tools for managing and analyzing jobs throughout their life cycle. You can create query views that can be simple query looking for a specific job ID or list of jobs assigned to you. The results can be displayed as a list or in a map for easy viewing. You can interact with the queried view. For example, we can remove a job that is no longer needed, or we can use a query to reassign any outstanding jobs when an employee has left the company. Now finally, within ArcGIS Workflow Manager comes a variety of reports that you can edit to fit your own business needs. Here we see a standard report that displays the percentage of jobs complete and another one that gives us the status of all high priority jobs. Now let's move on to our last software demonstration. Now that we've configured our workflow within the administrator application, let's return to ArcGIS Workflow Manager and put it to use. So inside of Manager, I'm going to quickly unpin the list and map views to give myself a little bit more real estate. This gives me a way to see all of the properties at once. Now I want to create a job from the job type corridor map that we created in the last demonstration. Here I select the job type corridor map. Notice that the job contains default settings that we configured earlier. I can change the assignment here to a group or other user, but I will go ahead and keep this assigned to myself as demo user. By clicking on the Advanced tab, I can specify the geographic location for this job. This is where the work will be done. So I can open up a map, and here I can zoom into the area of interest and draw a polygon or rectangle around the area where the work will be performed. I can save this area and it will be stored within the job for the lifetime of the job. Now, we're going to click OK and save these edits. And I want to proceed to the job and review its properties a bit, so we can see that the status is ready to work. I've created this and it's at its 0% complete, and I'm at the stage of collecting field data. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go to our Workflow tab and begin our work. So since the first step is a procedural step and I've already received and loaded the field data into my database, I'm going to use the Check the Current Step button to mark this step as already completed. This will move us on to the next step within the workflow. In the Generate Buffer step, this step will automatically open a geoprocessing dialog for the buffer tool. I can browse to the data that I need to buffer and specify a buffer distance. Within this tool, it's launching the tool with parameters that I've predefined. I'm going to keep the defaults that I defined earlier and click OK. By clicking OK, this will execute the tool and create the buffer. You can see that this is the same dialog that you see when executing geoprocessing tools within ArcMap or ArcCatalog. But the beauty here is that we can do all of this from within one location, ArcGIS Workflow Manager. In our next step, we need to perform QC. So this step is going to automatically open up ArcMap. And this ArcMap document is a predefined map document where it will zoom to the job's area of interest that we have just defined. And also, we'll make sure that the data that's loaded is coming from the proper source. Additionally, the symbology that's loaded can be pre-configured within this map. So I'm going to uncheck the area of interest so that I can see the data behind. And I need to add in the buffer that we just created in our geoprocessing step. So we can add in the buffer corridor that follows the pipeline. Here I'm going to select the buffer that we just created and add it to my map. Here you can, let's zoom out a little bit so we have a little bit more context. And I want to click Save before exiting ArcMap. Once we save this, the map will be accessible to all users that access this job throughout its lifespan, and all of the edits that I just did will be saved. Next, I want to run the Create Map step. So I've QC'd the data, and I want to create a map layout in PDF format. This step will create the PDF automatically and attach it to the job. The PDF document will appear in the attachments for the job. And here, we can take a look at our final map by saving it, because I want to save it so that other users who don't have access to ArcGIS Workflow Manager can also view the map. So let's take a look at the map. Here we have produced a finished map containing the corridor area and pipeline information that's needed for our pipeline review meeting. Now finally, since we finished the job, we can see that within the History tab, it shows all of the events that happened while I was proceeding through the job. So here you can see adding attachment, steps that have been completed. All of this is stored automatically. Another option is that we can view defined reports on jobs that exist within the system. For example, here is a report that shows user resources and how they're allocated across jobs within the organization. Now, in this demonstration, we created a job, executed its workflow, and reviewed the history and reporting tools provided within ArcGIS Workflow Manager. In this last section, we covered how you can manage your workflows through jobs and how the job is executed. We also touched on the notification and reporting capabilities of ArcGIS Workflow Manager. Now I would like to turn it over to Tope one last time to answer some more of your questions. Tope?
Thank you, Amadea. We have a couple more questions come in here. Mike from New Zealand is asking, can the AOIs be added to ArcMap for reporting all projects worked in a selected council district? The answer is yes. You can add the AOI map, the AOI layer, similarly to what you saw in the demo, to a map for your jobs, and you can symbolize them by using the out-of-the-box ArcMap symbology tools. Basically, you want to do maybe a join to a table that actually has the information that signifies what district or what council district you're working on. Paula from Stratpain is asking, can you source MS Access macros from within a workflow? You can interact with non-GIS or non-ArcGIS software directly from within a workflow step. So you can potentially open up another application from within a workflow step to execute within your jobs. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by source MS Access macros, but if it's referring to executing custom actions within the workflow steps, yes, you can, and you can definitely plug those into a workflow step. Christopher from Houston is asking, will this integrate with other workflow management applications? The answer is yes and no, depending on what level of integration you're talking about. There is no direct hook to any of the existing workflow management applications out there. However, we've designed ArcGIS Workflow Manager in a way that you can easily call, again, any executable. So for example, if you have another workflow management application that runs an EXE and you can pass in an argument to do one or two or three things, you can definitely plug that into one of the steps within the ArcGIS Workflow Manager workflow steps, and it automatically executes that on a job. Paula is asking again if there is a requirement to store predefined map documents in the same location as Workflow Manager, or on a network location? The answer is yes, you can store what you saw us do right now within the demo is basically storing the map back into the ArcGIS Workflow Manager repository. It stores it in a geodatabase, and that information is available to all your users throughout the lifespan of the job. However, you can also set up an option on the launch ArcMap step. We have an argument that allows you to define your own location. You can start to get fancy by using tokens within the ArcGIS Workflow Manager framework to define, to automatically assign runtime locations to where this map documents are stored at. They could be a file system or a network share. Carlos from Meserd is asking, do you have full cartographic control of automatically generated map like we just saw in the PDF? The answer is yes. What you saw in the PDF is basically the layout that we have set up on the job type for the map. So if you want to add more elements to that map, like, fancier legends, make the symbology look greater, add not arrows in a different location, insert tables, insert any element that ArcGIS or ArcMap supports out of the box. All of that is supported. The output to PDF simply takes the layout view and sends that output out to your end, attaches that output to your job. Christopher from Manuker is also asking, does the Workflow Manager reports use the database reporting service? The answer is no. What you just saw us run here is our own built reporting functionality or framework within ArcGIS Workflow Manager that allows you to mine all the Workflow Manager's system tables. However, you can use any other reporting service or engine to generate more fancy or more, advanced reports based on what suits your business needs. So Chris from Manuker is asking again, is there a SharePoint connector for the reporting services? For example, can you output this report automatically? No, you cannot. What we have is basically an export to HTML. We did not want to reinvent, an export functionality. So you can export to HTML and, manually upload that to a SharePoint site and make it accessible to all your users. I will turn it back to Amadia.
Thank you, Tope. Now, throughout this seminar, we've demonstrated how managing workflows provide consistency across your organization. The administrator application allows you to customize to your own business needs. And the ArcGIS Workflow Manager application itself gives you a dashboard view of your entire system. Before we go, I would like to point you to a few resources. For more information, on-site workshops and consultation are available through the Implementation Services team here at ESRI. Product information can be found under extensions in the ESRI corporate website. And there is also ESRI training available that focuses on data management and editing in a multi-user geodatabase environment. Your comments help us improve our seminars. Please take a moment to complete our survey. Just click the Give Us Feedback link to take the survey. We hope you enjoyed today's seminar. On behalf of ESRI, I'd like to thank you all for attending.